April 29, 1945, 3:47 hours, 17 kilometers south of Salzburg, Austria. The convoy moves without headlights. 5 Opel Blitz trucks grind through the pre-dawn darkness, their engines coughing diesel fumes into the freezing alpine air. Snow falls in thick, wet clumps, muffling the sound of their approach. The lead driver, a corporal named Franz Dietrich, whose hands haven't stopped shaking since Berlin fell, grips the steering wheel so hard his knuckles have gone white. Behind him, through the canvas flap separating the cab from the cargo bed, he can hear it. The metallic shifting, the weight. 73 wooden crates, each one stenciled with the Reichsbank eagle and stamped with serial numbers that no longer matter. Inside those crates, 412 gold bars, 20 kilograms each, taken from banks in Prague, Warsaw, Amsterdam, from Jewish families in Vienna whose names were erased from existence before their wealth was catalogued and shipped east. 8,240 kilograms of gold, worth approximately 11 million Reichsmarks in 1945. Worth silence, worth disappearance, worth everything. In the second truck, Oberst Colonel Johann Friedrich von Eberhardt sits rigid in the passenger seat, his iron cross catching the faint reflection of snow through the windscreen. He is 47 years old, a career officer, 3 years commanding Panzer supply operations across the Eastern Front. A man who has watched the Reich collapse kilometer by kilometer, retreat by retreat, atrocity by atrocity. His orders arrived 6 hours ago. Not from divisional command, not from Army Group South, from someone higher. Someone who understood that the war was over, not in the official sense, not yet, but in the way that mattered. The Americans were 60 kilometers north, the Soviets less than 100 east. The Führer was locked in his bunker in Berlin, issuing commands to armies that no longer existed. And von Eberhardt had been given a choice. Disguised as an order. Secure the assets, await further instruction. No destination specified, no timeline, no inventory check required upon delivery. He'd understood immediately. The officer who delivered the message, a hollow-eyed major from the Abwehr whose name von Eberhardt didn't ask for, had handed him a leather portfolio containing 3 documents. The first, a transfer manifest listing the gold as industrial material, priority reclassification pending. The second, a Wehrmacht authorization seal, signed by someone whose signature was illegible but whose authority was presumably absolute. The third was a map. Hand-drawn, topographical, showing a location in the Totes Gebirge, the Dead Mountains, a brutal range of limestone peaks where even the local hunters refused to venture in winter. On the map, a single red X marked a location labeled only Anlage 7. Facility 7. No such facility existed in any official Wehrmacht record. Von Eberhardt had burned the map after memorizing it. Then he'd assembled his men, 18 soldiers, hand-picked, not the best soldiers, not the most loyal to the ideology, but the ones who were tired, the ones who wanted to survive, the ones who understood that orders from ghosts were more dangerous than orders from generals. They'd loaded the trucks in darkness at a supply depot outside Linz, working in silence while the distant thunder of Soviet artillery rolled across the Danube Valley. No one had asked what they were carrying. No one needed to. Now climbing a narrow logging road that hadn't seen maintenance since 1942, von Eberhardt watches the landscape transform. The foothills give way to true mountains, vertical walls of rock disappearing into cloud cover, forests so dense the snow never reaches the ground beneath them. The air thins. Breath becomes visible even inside the truck cab. The driver beside him, Hauptfeldwebel Richter, a veteran of Stalingrad who lost 3 fingers to frostbite, speaks without taking his eyes off the road. Herr Oberst, the men are asking. Let them ask. They want to know if we're surrendering to the Americans, if this is transport for negotiation. Von Eberhardt doesn't answer immediately. Through the windscreen, the first truck has slowed, its brake lights glowing red in the snow. The road ahead has narrowed to barely more than a footpath, carved into the side of a cliff face. To the left, rock. To the right, a drop into darkness so complete it seems to have no bottom. "Tell the men," von Eberhardt says finally, "that we are following orders, nothing more." Richter nods. He knows what that means. In April 1945, following orders is the only loyalty that matters, because it's the only loyalty that might keep you alive when the reckoning comes. The convoy continues. At 4:21 hours, they reach the location. It doesn't look like a facility. It looks like nothing, a widening in the road where the forest opens into a small clearing, surrounded on three sides by sheer rock faces that rise 200 meters straight up. The snow here is undisturbed except for animal tracks, deer, maybe ibex. Von Eberhardt steps out of the truck. The cold hits him like a physical blow, -12 degrees Celsius. His breath crystallizes instantly. The other trucks have stopped in formation. Men are emerging, stamping their feet, cradling their Kar 98K rifles against their chests for warmth. They look at the clearing, at the mountains, at von Eberhardt. Waiting. He walks to the rock face on the north side of the clearing. His boots crunch through snow until he reaches bare stone. There, exactly where the map indicated, a fissure. Narrow, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through sideways. He produces a flashlight, clicks it on. The beam penetrates about 3 meters before being swallowed by darkness. But in those 3 meters he can see tool marks, fresh-cut stone. The fissure isn't natural. It's an entrance. Von Eberhardt turns back to his men. They're watching him with expressions he recognizes from the Eastern Front, the look of soldiers who have stopped believing in victory but haven't yet accepted defeat. Men suspended between two futures, neither of which they want. "Unload the trucks," he says. "Everything comes inside. We have 4 hours before dawn." No one moves. "That's an order." Richter steps forward first, then the others follow. The sound of truck tailgates dropping echoes off the rock walls, the metallic scrape of crates being dragged across truck beds, grunting, cursing under breath. And as the first crate of gold is carried toward the fissure in the mountain, von Eberhardt looks up at the sky, still dark, still snowing, and wonders if anyone will ever find this place. If anyone will ever know what happened here. If he'll ever leave. The fissure opens into a cave system. Not the pristine, tourist-friendly kind with wooden walkways and electric lighting. This is raw geology, a wound in the mountain carved by millennia of water erosion. Expanded in places by human hands that worked here recently, very recently. Von Eberhardt moves through the entrance passage sideways, his uniform scraping against limestone walls still wet with condensation. The flashlight beam catches mineral deposits that glitter like false gold. Behind him, he can hear Richter struggling with the first crate, wood scraping stone, the older man's labored breathing amplified by the confined space. 30 meters in, the passage widens. And von Eberhardt stops. The cave beyond is vast, a natural cathedral hollowed out of the mountain's heart. His flashlight can't find the ceiling. The beam just disappears upward into blackness that suggests either enormous height or the complete absorption of light by some quality of the stone itself. The floor is relatively level, sloping gently downward toward what sounds like running water somewhere in the deeper darkness. But it's what humans have added that makes him pause. Generator equipment, diesel-powered by. The smell of oil still lingering in the air. Cables running along the cave walls, terminating in work lights mounted on steel poles, currently dark. A wooden table with technical drawings weighed down by rocks. Surveying equipment, drilling apparatus, and against the far wall, barely visible in the flashlight's reach, the frame of a concrete structure. Partially completed. Von Eberhard approaches it slowly, his boots echoing. The structure is roughly 4 meters wide, 5 meters deep, built directly against the natural cave wall. Concrete blocks reinforced with steel rebar. The front face has a rectangular opening, a doorway not yet fitted with its door, though he can see the massive steel frame waiting nearby, along with what appears to be a vault-style locking mechanism still in its shipping crate. Inside the concrete structure, emptiness, waiting to be filled. Richter emerges from the entrance passage, gasping, "Herr Oberst, what is this place?" Von Eberhard doesn't answer. Immediately, he's looking at the technical drawings on the table. They're dated March 17, 1945, 6 weeks ago, stamped with an authorization code he doesn't recognize. The drawings show this exact structure, dimensions, concrete mixture specifications, ventilation shaft placement, drainage considerations. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, capacity 12,000 kg. Capacity 12,000 kilograms. More than enough for what they're carrying. This was prepared, von Eberhard says quietly. Someone knew, someone planned. Planned what? Von Eberhard turns to face his sergeant. Richter is 53 years old enough to have fought in the First War, to have seen the Reich rise and now to watch it burn. His remaining fingers grip the flashlight so tightly the metal casing creaks. A cache, von Eberhard says, for assets that cannot be surrendered, cannot be captured. Understanding crosses Richter's face, then something else. Fear, maybe, or the recognition of complicity. The men outside, Richter says, they need to know. They know enough. Von Eberhard cuts him off. Get the crates inside, all of them, then we seal it. It takes 3 hours and 40 minutes. The work is brutal. Each 20-kilogram gold bar must be carried through the narrow entrance passage, requiring 2 men per crate, moving sideways, sometimes on their knees where the passage constricts. The men work in rotation, 8 inside at a time while the others rest by the trucks, smoking the last of their cigarettes and watching the sky lighten incrementally toward dawn. Von Eberhard works alongside them. Not because he needs to prove anything, his rank is absolute here, his authority unquestioned, but because he needs to know, needs to feel the weight of what they're hiding, needs to count. 73 crates. Each one opened briefly for verification. The gold bars inside arranged in precise rows, each stamped with the Reichsbank eagle and a serial number. Some bars also carry older stamps from the National Bank of Belgium, the Central Bank of the Netherlands. One crate contains bars stamped with Hebrew characters, their origin obvious and damning. Von Eberhard had served in Poland in 1939. He'd seen the ghettos. He'd heard the rumors about the camps, though seeing was different from hearing, and he'd made certain never to see. But he knew, every officer knew. And now he's burying the evidence, hiding the theft, securing the future for men who don't deserve one. Or maybe, and this thought crystallizes as he stacks the 61st crate inside the concrete bunker, maybe he's securing something else entirely. By 8-12 hours, all 73 crates are inside. The men stand in the cave, illuminated now by the generator-powered work lights that Richter managed to restart. The lights cast harsh shadows that make the concrete bunker look like a tomb, which von Eberhard supposes it is. He addresses them from in front of the bunker entrance. What we have done here is classified at the highest level. You will speak of it to no one, not to other soldiers, not to your families, not in Allied custody should that occur. He pauses. The official record will show that our convoy was destroyed by partisan attack southwest of Salzburg. All cargo lost. This location does not exist. A young private, barely 19, his face still soft with youth, raises his hand tentatively. Herr Oberst, what happens to us now? It's the question von Eberhard has been asking himself since they left Linz. The original orders, such as they were, said nothing about after, nothing about extraction or reassignment or cover stories. Just secure the assets, await further instruction. But no further instruction is coming. Von Eberhardt knows this with the certainty of a man who's watched authority structures disintegrate in real time. Whoever gave the order is either dead, captured, or fled. The chain of command is broken. The Reich itself is broken. Which means the decision is his. We seal the bunker, he says. Then we separate, small groups, civilian clothes where possible, make for the American lines. Surrender as individual soldiers, not as a unit. Your stories are simple. You were separated from your divisions during the retreat. You have no knowledge of strategic assets or classified operations. The men exchange glances, relief mixed with uncertainty. And you, Herr Oberst, this from Richter. Von Eberhardt has prepared for this question. I'll remain behind, ensure the site is properly concealed, then I'll follow. It's a lie and Richter knows it, but the sergeant simply nods. They seal the bunker at 9:40 hours. The steel door fits perfectly into its frame, 2 tons of reinforced metal with a locking mechanism that requires a specific sequence of wheel rotations to open. Von Eberhardt has memorized the combination. He's also written it down in a small leather notebook that he keeps in his inside pocket, along with precise coordinates of this location and a detailed inventory of the bunker's contents. Insurance or evidence, he's not sure which. Once the door is locked, they mix concrete, the last of the material left by whoever prepared this site. They seal the door frame. Add an additional layer of concrete blocks across the entire bunker face, making it look like nothing more than a rough storage alcove cut into the cave wall. Then they go further. Using debris from the cave floor, loose rock, mineral deposits, even bat guano scraped from deeper chambers, they cover the concrete, make it look old, undisturbed. By the time they're finished, in the dim light of the work lamps, the bunker is nearly invisible, just another irregular feature of the cave wall. Von Eberhardt makes them repeat the process with the entrance fissure. They collapse part of the opening using carefully placed explosive charges, small enough not to cause a major rockfall, large enough to make the entrance look like a natural narrowing. They scatter debris. Brush away tracks in the clearing outside. Drive the trucks in circles to confuse any vehicle traces. By 1300 hours, the site looks untouched. The men gather by the trucks one final time. Von Eberhardt distributes their last pay, worthless Reichsmarks, but the ritual matters and shakes each man's hand. Some weep. Others stare at the mountains with hollow eyes. Richter is last. "You're not coming, are you?" the sergeant says quietly. "No." "What will you do?" Von Eberhardt looks back at the rock face concealing the cave entrance. "Guard it for a while." "And then?" "I don't know." Richter nods slowly. He removes his own iron cross earned at Kursk a lifetime ago and tries to hand it to von Eberhardt. "For luck, Herr Oberst." Von Eberhardt pushes it back gently. "Keep it. You'll need it more than I will." They embrace briefly. Then Richter climbs into the lead truck, and the convoy begins its descent back toward the valley, back toward surrender, back toward whatever future awaits men who served the Reich and lived long enough to see it die. Von Eberhardt watches until the last truck disappears around the mountain curve. Then he turns back toward the cave. Silence settles over the mountain like a physical presence. Von Eberhardt stands in the clearing for 17 minutes, motionless, listening. The wind moves through the pine trees with a sound like distant ocean waves. Snow continues falling, lighter now, individual flakes drifting rather than the heavy curtain of the early morning. Somewhere far below, an avalanche rumbles, the sound reaching him as a low vibration through the soles of his boots rather than audible noise. No human sound, no engines, no voices. He is alone. The realization should bring relief, mission accomplished, men dispersed, secret secured. Instead, it brings a hollowness that starts in his chest and spreads outward until his hands begin trembling, not from cold, from something else, something he hasn't allowed himself to feel since 1941. Since the first winter in Russia, when he watched men freeze to death in their foxholes and understood that ideology couldn't defeat temperature. He's 57 kilometers from the nearest town. The Americans control everything north and west. The Soviets are pushing from the east, and he's standing in front of a cave containing $8 million in stolen gold, with no plan beyond, remain behind. What did he think would happen? Von Eberhardt forces his hands steady through sheer will. He's an officer. Officers don't succumb to doubt. They assess, they adapt, they execute. He returns to the cave. The generator has enough fuel for perhaps 40 more hours of continuous operation. Von Eberhardt shuts it down immediately, plunging the cave into darkness broken only by his flashlight. He'll need to conserve everything: fuel, battery power, the supplies that were left here. He conducts inventory by flashlight. Stored along the cave's eastern wall, concealed under canvas tarps, 12 jerry cans of diesel fuel, 3 crates of canned rations, Wehrmacht standard issue dated 1944, 2 cases of bottled water, medical supplies minimal, a shortwave radio battery-powered, blankets, a portable stove, ammunition for weapons they no longer have. And documents. Von Eberhardt finds them in a metal footlocker beneath the surveying equipment. 3 folders, each thick with papers. He carries them to the wooden table and spreads them out. The first folder contains geological surveys of this mountain range, dating back to 1938. Someone, presumably military engineers, had been searching for cave systems large enough to serve as storage facilities. This location is marked with a red star and the notation: optimal, remote, stable, year-round access limited. The second folder is financial records, transfers, account numbers, lists of assets relocated from occupied territories between 1942 and 1945. The numbers are staggering: hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks, gold, jewelry, art. Securities, most of it designated for the Reichsbank, some marked for special allocation, a euphemism that means anything and nothing. The gold in the bunker represents perhaps 3% of the total listed, which means there are other caches, other caves, other bunkers scattered across what remains of the Reich, each one containing fragments of an empire's stolen wealth. The third folder is personnel files. 12 names, officers and engineers, each one assigned to Alpine relocation project, compartmented. Von Eberhardt recognizes 2 names, both now dead, killed in the bombing of Dresden. The others are strangers, but next to each name, a location code, A1 through A12. This location, his location, is A7. Someone organized this. Someone systematic, methodical, thinking months or years ahead. Someone who understood that the Reich would fall but believed that its wealth could be preserved, hidden, retrieved later by survivors who knew where to look. Von Eberhardt finds his own name on the final page. Oberst J.F. von Eberhardt, assignment A7, relocation 29 April 1945, status autonomous. Autonomous, meaning unsupervised, meaning deniable, meaning if he's caught no one will claim him. Beneath his name, a handwritten note in different ink added recently: trust no one, secure until contact, HH. HH. Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Goering, could be anyone, could be no one. In April 1945, initials are the only signature that matters, because names carry consequences. Von Eberhardt closes the folder carefully. His hands have stopped shaking. Purpose, even terrible purpose, steadies the nerves. He understands now. He's not a guard. He's a placeholder. a living marker indicating where the treasure is buried, meant to survive long enough to guide someone back here. Someone who will arrive with the proper authorization codes and reclaim what was hidden. Except that person isn't coming. The Reich is dead. Its leadership is dead, captured, or scattered. The Americans and Soviets will spend years hunting for Nazi gold. They'll drain lakes, excavate bunkers, follow every rumor and legend. They'll find some of it, maybe most of it. But not this, not if von Eberhardt does his job. The question is, whose job is he doing now? He spent the next 4 days establishing a routine. Dawn, exit the cave, check for evidence of intrusion. Brush away any new tracks in the clearing, animal or human. Use fallen branches to obscure the entrance fissure further. Midday, ration check. 1 can of food. Water from a stream he's located 30 meters downslope, running fast enough not to freeze. The water tastes of minerals and stone. Afternoon, radio monitoring. The shortwave can pick up Allied broadcasts, though reception is inconsistent in the mountains. He listens to BBC reports of Germany's collapse. Hitler confirmed dead on April 30th, the day after von Eberhardt arrived here. Berlin fallen. Mussolini executed. The war in Europe effectively over, though formal surrender won't come until May 7th. Evening, document review. Von Eberhardt has begun creating his own records, a journal of sorts. Detailed notes on the bunker's contents, the location's coordinates, the access procedures. He writes in a mixture of German and Latin, a private code that would make the documents worthless to casual finders but interpretable by anyone with classical education. Insurance again, evidence again. Night, darkness. He doesn't run the generator, doesn't risk light that might be visible from the valley. He sits in absolute blackness, wrapped in Wehrmacht blankets that still smell faintly of diesel, and listens to the mountain. The cave has sounds. Water dripping somewhere in the depths, wind moving through unseen passages. Once, something large moving in the darkness. He never determines what, and it doesn't return. On the 5th day, May 3rd, 1945, he hears voices. They reach him as echoes first, distorted by distance and stone. German voices, young, frightened. Von Eberhardt freezes at the cave entrance, one hand on his Luger. He's 20 meters inside, far enough that he's invisible from the clearing but close enough to hear. 3 men emerge into the clearing, not soldiers or not anymore. They wear civilian clothes, ill-fitting, probably stolen, but they move with military discipline, scanning the tree line before advancing. One carries a rifle, the others have pistols visible in their waistbands. Deserters or survivors, the distinction barely matters now. There's nothing here, one says. His voice carries clearly in the mountain stillness. We should keep moving. The map showed a facility, another argues. He's holding a paper too far for von Eberhardt to see details. Supplies, maybe weapons. Forget the map. Everything's already looted or destroyed. They argue for several minutes. Von Eberhardt remains absolutely still, controlling even his breathing. His finger rests on the Luger's trigger guard. 3 targets, 20 meters. He could drop them all before they reached cover. But then what? Bodies in the clearing would attract attention. Scavengers, investigators, and he'd have committed murder for men who were simply lost, simply desperate. The war is over. Killing continues the war. After what feels like an hour but is probably 10 minutes, the men move on. They follow the road downslope, toward the valley, toward whatever future awaits Wehrmacht soldiers without an army. Von Eberhardt doesn't move for another 30 minutes. When he finally exhales, the breath comes out shaking. That night he makes a decision. He can't stay, not permanently, not for the months or years it would take for someone to return if anyone ever does. The supplies will run out. Winter will come. The Americans will expand their occupation zone, send patrols into the mountains. Eventually, someone will find this place. And when they do, they'll find the gold. They'll find the records. They'll piece together what happened here. Unless those things don't exist anymore. Von Eberhardt sits in the darkness, turning the problem over in his mind like a Rubik's Cube. Destroy the evidence. But the gold itself is evidence. 8,000 kilograms of it, impossible to move alone, impossible to melt down, impossible to make disappear. Hide it better, but it's already hidden. The bunker is sealed, the cave is concealed. The problem isn't the gold, the problem is him, his knowledge, his presence. As long as he exists, he's a thread someone can pull to unravel everything. The solution forms slowly, terribly. He needs to disappear, completely, in a way that ensures no one ever comes looking. That closes the book on Oberst Johann Friedrich von Eberhardt so thoroughly that even if someone eventually finds the cave, they won't connect it to him. He needs to die. Not actually, though that's an option he considers, but officially, conclusively, in a way that leaves a body or enough evidence of death that no questions linger. The mountains provide opportunities, avalanches, falls, exposure. Men die here every winter, and spring is barely less forgiving. But it has to be convincing. It has to be witnessed, or at least discoverable. Von Eberhardt pulls out his journal and begins planning his own death.